I think it's a good thing. We do need to make more things here in America. I went on my diatribe about how I don't like solar panels because of all the problems that it has, and it only gives you half power throughout half the day. So then what are you going to do? You gotta come up with some storage options, which are batteries, and then you gotta have now we're we don't produce those here either. We got to produce them from overseas. So
Well, that's why we're still going to be dependent on natural gas. I think we're going to be dependent on for a while because if you have solar, you're going to need natural gas backup for it during the times you can't use the solar. So no matter how you look at it, you're gonna need that some of these fossil fuels.
That's right. Amen, brother. Because look, when you got a big mound of natural gas in this country, and we say, "Oh, let's not use it," because but that seems kind of silly. Can't we produce natural gas burning plants that are clean burning, that don't produce so much carbon emissions?
Yeah, if we do carbon capture and sequestration, then we can do that. So we can do that in a lot of instances. We can do it for coal power plants and natural gas power plants, but we can also do it when we produce our oil and get our natural gas. We can have the carbon, capture sequestration type of plants. So we get the bill or the act does have a tax credit for that. So it was $50 under the 45Q tax, rebate, but now it's going to go up to $85 per ton per ton. So that's what's going on with that.
So that's actually incentivizing oil and gas companies to produce more oil and gas, right?
I would think so, yeah.
So
yeah.
That, in a sense, if we produce more oil and gas, the price of oil and gas goes down. Okay, so that would be the only thing that would, in my message, because energy runs everything. Energy is the lifeblood of any economy. Okay, you have to have energy. All right.
Yeah.
If you don't have energy, you got nothing. So, and if you have expensive energy, then you got nothing. So, energy going down is good, but this doesn't do anything for the people that don't want more oil and gas in this country. That's not helping the climate change stuff, right? Unless you incentivize them to do clean burning power plants with natural gas, with coal, things like that, by doing sequestration and carbon credits. But also in the bill, so again, speaking out of both sides of their mouths, they're actually allowing more leases for drilling oil and gas, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So
little ironic, but
I mean, a lot of people don't like this bill because they see it as giving into the oil and gas industry because they're allowing these oil and natural gas leases to happen in places like the Gulf of Mexico and Alaska.
Right.
And
places that are really far away from here. So
and actually, it's not really adding to it because they were already doing this year. They had auction of over 80 million acres in the Gulf of Mexico, but only 1.2 million of those acres were bought by the oil company. So they're just kind of reselling it again, releasing it.
So we'll see if they scoop them up.
If they'll even get it. Yeah. So it's something like that.
So if there's, again, this could reduce inflation over the long term. If we produce more oil and gas, supply goes up, and therefore we have inflation reduction. So that could help if they bite on this. If they take the bait. But but they're going to be penalized in other ways if they produce methane, right? So there's a methane tax in there that they're going to.
Yeah.
So you talked about that earlier. That's how they're recouping some of the money, but they're getting credits in some way if they sequester the carbon emissions and if they reduce emissions or put it back in the ground. But also if they let the methane out too much, then they get penalized for it, right?
So I don't see how this act actually helps reduce the methane. I mean, you're generating income for if they pollute the methane, but they're just going to spend a lot of this funding on ways to detect it. They're going to incentivize more companies to make sensors. They're going to support things like drones and satellite to see how much methane is being produced because they estimate that the oil companies are underestimating the amount of methane that they're generating from these natural gas and oil facilities. So, but I don't see how that's going to help reduce the amount of methane. They're not really putting anything to help that out. So what are we going to do for these gas companies if like for their wells or whatever. How, maybe they could put a flare up or something, but they're not giving them any money to do that.
Yeah, so let's spend more
to put
money
up,
to
put
do
up
it.
a flare. That's spend more money.
And have to fix their leaks in the pipes.
So
and
so
stuff
that
like
actually increases inflation because that money gets passed on to us. They get feed for it, then they have to pay for the cost of fixing it. So then the gas prices go up.
Let's see if we can figure out what would be good things to do that would help the environment and then help the economy here in America, because it really, you're talking about the 40%, that there has to be at least 40% of it produced here in America, which I think is a good thing. It's a good start. They're really putting all their emphasis on these solar panels, but I think, we could do something better. What would be better than, banking all of this, our future on solar panels? There's probably, you talked about the hydrogen production. That's in the bill. For clean energy production, they get a rebate.
That's where we need to go, is hydrogen.
Hydrogen, baby.
Yeah,
a lot of hydrogen in America, right? So
yeah.
We don't have to import that. It's just, in the past, hydrogen's been a problem because it's cost a lot more money and more energy to produce hydrogen than the hydrogen gives back in energy itself. So therefore, it hasn't always been very effective.
So there is a energy tax credit for that, for the hydrogen.
There you go.
That
might help it out.
Yeah.
The Clean Hydrogen Tax Credit under the Inflation Reduction Act has the effect of increasing the previous tax rebate of 60 cents per kilogram of hydrogen up to at least 75 cents to $1.20 per kilogram, but under normal conditions. But it can go up to a maximum of $3 per kilogram under conditions of specific wage and apprenticeships requirements.
So it was 60 cents per kilogram. Now it's $3 per kilogram.
That's a huge increase. Okay, that's like what, 500%, something like that. I mean, that's a big increase for incentivizing hydrogen production. Well, I think it's great because that right there, we could establish a whole manufacturing, processing, and production of that here in America without importing cobalt, and other weird stuff from, mining stuff from overseas, right? So that's something we could do here. Well, let's hope that sound minds prevail, and in the future they extend that or pass another act so they can give them more credits. Because hydrogen, I think, is a great thing to do where we don't have to buy some kind of solar panels from overseas, ship all the materials there from Africa and Australia, and then get it assembled, and then assemble the last 40% of it here.
I think that would be probably the best thing from this climate change part of it is to get a hydrogen infrastructure going.
If we're using a lot of power to make hydrogen, then that's going to be worse for the environment because we're burning all those fossil fuels. However, what you're going to say is maybe we'd use green energy to produce the hydrogen, right?
Yeah. So for example, there's 3 ways you can produce the hydrogen. He's talking about we can use natural gas, which is a fossil fuel, but I think we're going to be reliable on natural gas for a while, don't you think?
Yeah.
I mean, even if we do all this
we
clean
got a lot of
stuff,
natural gas. Yeah.
We got a lot of natural gas, so you can make hydrogen from that. You can make the hydrogen from electrolysis from solar panels.
Right.
So that's another way. And a third way is you can use them from wind and nuclear plants. You can make hydrogen that way.
What if you did a clean burning coal plant? Can you do that too?
You could do it too, yeah. You could make hydrogen from a clean burning coal plant. Yep.
Which would be expensive, but I mean, maybe over the long term that would be worthwhile. So
yeah,
because it's more expensive to create these clean burning coal plants, but still, I think cost per effort of, when you compare hydrogen production to energy you produce, energy you expend from coal, you'd probably do all right.
It helps with manufacturing because a lot of the manufacturing can be done with green hydrogen, and that green hydrogen is made if you capture that carbon dioxide as you're making the hydrogen from natural gas.
Okay.
So that's the way it does it, and that would affect things like if you make ammonia, for fertilizer and stuff, that could be done more greener. And then if you make steel, you could use green hydrogen.
So there's some rebates in this bill for best practices for manufacturers, clean energy manufacturers, and we just talking about even the cement and the steel industries, all those places that can reduce their carbon emissions, they get tax rebates or credits for it, right? So that's in the bill. There's several $1 billion for that. So that's a good thing. Let's talk about coal then.
Yeah.
There's no incentive in there for coal in this bill that I understand, right? Because we can make
Well,
clean burning.
there's a carbon capture part, so they
Okay.
could do it carbon capture with the.
So if they
with the
decide
coal.
that they want the carbon capture credits by producing a coal factory that produces power, that might be a way to do it, right? Would that, they could do it that way, right? So, because coal, that's another thing that's in America is coal. We got a lot of that. There's tons of coal, right? So,
Yeah.
what is it? Hundreds of years of coal still left in this
Think
country.
how like we have 500 years of
Oh,
coal.
oh,
I think
so
almost.
what-
Well, we have like 80 years of natural gas and 500
well, that's
years of
okay. So,
coal. I was gonna say that I know you were a Bush fan back in the day. And
hey,
stuff like
easy!
that,
Don't
but-
talk about politics here, man. Come on.
But
And who says I was a Bush fan?
I'm just kidding. You were, but anyways, he kind of came up with clean coal energy. That he is the one that kind of introduced that, and so that was kind of a shame that we went away from that because
Yeah, I always liked that, man.
I think we could have profited from that.
Right.
the clean coal energy.
Well, and
that we wanted.
well, we're reducing our coal plants. We're not increasing them, which is unfortunate.
Yeah,
So.
that's
But
yeah.
using the clean burning coal idea, the concept, it can be costly at first, but because you can run coal for decades after that in a factory, you're going to recoup those costs. And so I think if the government would incentivize that more, that would reduce emissions, but provide us with a stable energy supply as well. That would be another good example of reducing greenhouse gases, but also increasing our energy supply and cutting costs down, so therefore inflation goes down because coal is pretty stable. That would be a really, really, really straightforward solution.
So summarize for us what things we could do in America to make clean energy.
So,
Yeah, to
yeah.
help climate
Right.
change.
Right.
Pretty much. What
So-
things can we do to make
Okay, we
all
could-
this stuff?
We could do more incentives, not penalties, but incentives for wind generators here, so we can manufacture those here in America. Because I think we could make more than 75% of that we could probably make here in America if we were able to compete in cost wise.
So we really don't need to concentrate as much on the electrical vehicles and the solar power. I mean the solar photovoltaic.
No, I would say those are fine, and we slowly increase those things. I don't think our goals of having 50% of the cars being sold as
Electric vehicles.
by 2035
Yeah.
is
And then
is a good goal.
80% of electricity being clean energy.
That's
by-
yeah, and then that's going to have to be a large reliability on solar, traditional solar panels. So again, those things are not, as we talked about before, those are not necessarily helping the solution. They're causing too many unwanted consequences. But let's increase our incentives for wind generators to make them in America. Let's incentivize our ability to produce more hydrogen, like you talked about.
Hydrogen is a good one. I like that one.
That's probably number one. The one, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
And let's incentivize coal, clean burning coal,
Clean burning, carbon capture, pretty much.
carbon
is
capture,
Yeah. Yep.
and same thing goes for natural gas,
Mm-hmm.
and concentrated CSPs, concentrated solar power, right, for the towers. So that to me is a better solar solution than traditional solar panels. So those 5 things would be pretty
Yeah,
good.
those would be good solutions, I think. So,
Do you have any others?
no, I think you're right. Those are the good things to do.
Well, call up the Prez and tell them all about it.
Yeah.